in, whose textbook trained a whole generation of kids to believe that America is a dastardly imperialist nation with very few redeeming qualities. Here is what Noam Chomsky said about slavery, and then I want to play you what Thomas Sowell said about the same topic. Listen to this.
The U.S. economy was built on vicious and murderous slave labor. These slave labor camps in the South producing cotton that would have impressed the Nazis. And they were quite efficient. Efficiency was in fact increased. Productivity was increased rapidly through the technology of a bullwhip and a pistol, just by torturing people much more viciously. And that's the source, that's a large part of the source of the modern economy.
Even in the antebellum South, most whites did not have slaves. The cost of one male adult slave was more than the average white person earned all year. So they weren't all living in terror with their plantations and all the rest of it. It's insane. The other thing, I have a slight sidebar in there on the history of slavery. Mm-hmm. The history of slavery existed all over the world for thousands of years among all sorts of people, as far back as the history of the human species goes. It's one of many evils that the left tries to localize, when in fact it is a universal evil.
Now, Ibram Kendi is an American author, professor, and anti-racist activist, as opposed to a pro-racist activist, I guess. He's a historian of race and discriminatory policy, and he is the director of the Center for Anti-Racist Research at Boston University. And he was included in Time magazine's 100 Most Influential People of 2020. Before I play you him being asked about his definition of racism and his response, as I mentioned, this man was in Time magazine's 100 Most Influential People of 2020. For years, Ebony magazine, one of the most influential black magazines, published monthly. I think they began publishing probably in the 40s. And every year they had a feature called the 100 Most Influential Black Americans. But because there were so many influential black Americans, they changed the feature to the 100 plus most influential black Americans. And guess who has never been on the list of the 100 most influential black Americans? Thomas Sowell. Walter Williams. Clarence Thomas. How is a sitting member of the U.S. Supreme Court who happened to be black not one of the 100 plus most influential Americans? Because they hated his policies. They hated his politics. They hated the fact he was appointed by a Republican. And Thomas Sowell, as far as Ebony magazine, doesn't even exist. Man has published over 40 books. Walter Williams, to my knowledge, is the first and only black economics chair of a non-historically black college. He's not on it. Now, back to Mr. Kendi. Here's what happened at this forum.
You talked about the importance of defining racism, but unless I missed it, which is possible, I didn't hear your personal definition. Is there one that you would offer us? Like, how do you define racism?
Sure. So racism, I would define it as a collection of racist policies that lead to racial inequity that are substantiated by racist ideas.
WTH. What did he just now say? What did that even mean? Can you come again?
You talked about the importance of defining racism, but unless I missed it, which is possible, I didn't hear your personal definition. Is there one that you would offer us? Like, how do you define racism?
Sure. So racism, I would define it as a collection of racist policies that lead to racial inequity that are substantiated by racist ideas.
Notice that people laughed because they didn't understand a word he said.
How do you define racism?
Sure. So racism, I would define it as a collection of racist policies that lead to racial inequity that are substantiated by racist ideas. Sure, a collection of racist policies that lead to racial inequity that are substantiated by racist ideas. And anti-racism is pretty simple, using the same terms. Anti-racism is a collection of anti-racist policies leading to racial, anybody want to take a guess? Equity that are substantiated by anti-racist ideas.
I was born here, and I was raised here, and dadgummit, I'm gonna die here. And no side-winding, bushwhacking, hornswoggling, crocker is gonna roll my biscuit cutter.
Now, who can argue with that?